Hello and welcome to the 741 channel. Thank you for stopping by. Today we're going to take a look at putting these motorcycle handlebar risers on my 2013 Honda NC700x. The risers that I've decided to use on this bike are the ROX Speed FX 2-inch risers. These will accommodate 7/8 inch handlebars like I have on my Honda, or they can be used on 1 1/8 inch bars as well. And you may also be able to see up there in the corner of the package that these were made in the United States. So that's kind of a refreshing thing to see these days. Here's a look at what we got in the package. You can see, of course, we got the two risers. We got an instruction book over here and a ROX sticker. Here's a closer look at the riser. You can see that it's set up for my application. This spacer allows the 7/8 inch bar to be used in the clamp here. But if you had the inch and 1/8 bars, what you would do is you would move this spacer down here to the pivot point, and that would go on the bike there, and the handlebars would go through here without the spacer in it. So you may be able to see here, this appears to have been machined from one piece of metal, well, at least the bottom part. This, of course, is a separate piece. But you can see the machining marks on there, and this is aluminum, and I'm pretty sure that this is black anodized, but it could just be a type of paint. But either way, it should be pretty rugged and should hold up well on the motorcycle. So I shouldn't have to lengthen any of the hoses or cables or wires or anything on the handlebars here, but I am going to need to try and get as much slack out of them as I can. So you may be able to see that there's some clips down here holding these wiring bundles in, and they're not adjustable, so I'm just trying to pull the slack up as much as I can to give myself a service loop, so to speak. There's another one on this side, and then from there everything else should be either adjustable or movable to kind of get what we need in order to have that 2-inch rise. So next up, I've got a 12mm socket and a short extension on my ratchet, and I'm just going to remove these 4 bolts that hold the gooseneck down over top of the handlebars. So there's what the bolts look like that hold it down. They should all be the same. So you can see with the bolts removed, the handlebars are now kind of free to move wherever they need to. So I'm just going to pivot them around and kind of get them up here out of the way. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is pop the top gooseneck bracket off of the handlebars here. Now it's a little bit stuck from age here, so I may need to tap that off of there. Whoops, lost it down there in the bike. So next up, you can see I've got the 2 risers placed in the handlebar bracket here, and I've removed the top part of the clamp on each of the risers. Next up, I'm going to bring back the original Honda factory clamp and put that back over it, just as it would go over the handlebars. Now I'll drop these bolts back in and just tighten them up finger tight for now. Next up, you can see I've pivoted both of the risers back up so they're sort of roughly in place of where they'll be when the handlebars are mounted. Next up, I'll bring back the bottom half of the spacers, and you may be able to see here that there's a pin on the surface of the spacer that mates into the hole in the body of the bracket. So I'm going to get these positioned kind of roughly where I think they need to be, and then I'm going to tighten them up a little bit more with this wrench. I'm not going to tighten them all the way because I still may need to adjust things a bit, but just enough to keep them from pivoting as I try and position the handlebars. Next up, I'm going to bring the handlebars back in place. I'm not going to position them exactly where they need to go. I'm just going to get them kind of roughly on the brackets here and make sure everything is lined up. You can see this one kind of popped out. Now I'll bring back the top part of the bracket. You can see my spacer is still in there and positioned correctly. So I'll just drop that on, and again I'll put these bolts in and just tighten them up finger tight for now. I've got my 6mm Allen socket here to kind of help me get things cranked down. So next up, I'm going to pivot the handlebars around and kind of get them in a position where I think is going to be comfortable for riding. And I'll also adjust the cables and wires and things as needed before I sock everything down. So I've got everything tightened up here. I used my 6mm Allen socket to tighten the cap head screws on the riser brackets. And then I used my 12mm wrench to get in here and tighten up the factory handlebar bolts on the factory clamp. So everything's good and tight. Now, having said that, these handlebars are not really positioned where I'd like them. I'd really rather have them kind of pivoted further up and forward. But I found when I was checking clearances that I've got a little bit of an interference issue with my brake reservoir and this zero gravity windscreen that's on this bike. So in order to keep everything from hitting, I had to kind of push these down a little bit lower than I wanted them to, at least for now. I think what I might end up doing is getting rid of this zero gravity windscreen that the previous owner put on the bike and replace it with something else. That's pretty much going to do it for the ROX handlebar risers on this 2013 Honda NC700x. Now, like I said, the only problem that I have here is the interference with that zero gravity windscreen that the previous owner put on this bike. So I was thinking about changing it anyway. This just gives me more of an excuse to do that. So anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to leave a comment or subscribe, feel free to do that as well. Thanks for watching.